Hello, wrestling fans. This is King Icheboo Sports Network, King Icheboo speaking. Today we're going to begin World Championship Wrestling on the King Icheboo Sports Network. We have 8 associations throughout North America. Each will present a champion, and these 8 champions will fight for World Championship Wrestling. The 8 associations are Stampede Wrestling, Maple Leaf Wrestling, National Wrestling Alliance, the NWA, the WWF, the Extreme Championship Wrestling, ECW, the AWA, American Wrestling Association, the Championship Wrestling from Florida, CWF, and the Continental Wrestling Association, CWA. We are going to start with the AWA, the American Wrestling Association, centered head office in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where we're going to start this championship wrestling presentation for you today. Let's introduce to you the members of the American Wrestling Association, the AWA. There are 19 wrestlers in this association, and they will be battling out for the championship, to be the honor of having the association championship going to the world championships. You can see here the first wrestler is the Big Boss Man. The second wrestler is little Bobby Heenan. When he was a wrestler, this is not him as a manager. This is Bobby Heenan as a wrestler. And before you laugh, I have to tell you about the first match that was played already. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Brock Lesnar is a member of the AWA. Now you say, well, he wasn't a member of the AWA. He was WWF. This was all done by, how should I say, just random name picking. I had a name picking program that just there was 170 wrestlers or so, and it just picked wrestlers and put them in associations so they don't match historically. Some do, surprisingly, but some don't. Most of them don't. And Brock, of course, is one that never was in the AWA, but he is in here because he was picked to be. Same thing with Captain Lou Albano, was never his manager, but that was randomly picked. Johnny Smith was never his partner, but it was just randomly picked. Everything is randomly picked in the King Icheboo Sports Network Wrestling. Fourth member is George the Animal Steele. And we're going to talk about these wrestlers a little bit as we go on. Gorgeous George, probably the most famous wrestler of the early days, is in this association. Gorilla Monsoon. Hawk. And we're going to see a little bit of Hawk later. Jack Briscoe is in this association. He was one of the most famous wrestlers of the 70s. Jimmy Hart. Again, it's not Jimmy Hart the manager, it's Jimmy Hart the wrestler is in this association. The Mouth of the South. Mick Foley, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, is in this American Wrestling Association, the AWA. Paul the Butcher Vachon, a Canadian wrestler from Stampede Wrestler. He got picked into the AWA. Rikidozan, a Japanese wrestler. Well, the guy who started the craze, how big Japanese wrestling is now, this was the father of Japanese wrestling. And he's in our group here in this association. Scott Hall is in this association. Red Rooster Terry Taylor. The Missing Link, another Canadian wrestler. He is in this association. The Rock, you probably heard of him. He's in every movie. He is in this association. Tommy Rich, a wrestler from the 70s and 80s. Vader. Vader was a heel, big-time heel in the 90s. Vern Gagne is the final wrestler. Very famous old-school, old-time wrestler. So those are the members of the AWA. These wrestlers will battle it out to become the AWA champion. And you probably have your favorites already. So I was going to talk. The first match was between probably the biggest, not only. Well, I have in my mind you have to pick a heel and you have to pick a face for every match. And in my mind, the biggest face of this group is Gorgeous George. Is there a bigger face in all of history than Gorgeous George? He was so popular in his day. And so in my mind, he was the face. And who is a bigger heel? He's the number one heel in my mind in this group was Bobby Heenan. But you look at Bobby Heenan, he's not much of a wrestler. He's not more of a manager. That's where he got his fame. He's only a 1250 overall as a wrestler. He's weak. But so I didn't want to broadcast that one. I thought it'd be too much of a mismatch. But what happened in the match? Well, let's see if I go way down here to our match summary, the schedule and the match summary. There's a TV match, a pay-per-view match, and a no disqualification match. The way this game goes, so this wrestling game goes. So basically, these guys face off, not knowing each other in a TV match, something like Monday Night Raw or whatever. And of course, there's very few finishing pins. You know, it's meant to advance a story and lead possibly to a pay-per-view match. And if pay-per-view match doesn't solve things, they have a no disqualification match. That's how this works. This is Vintage Pro Wrestling is the name of this game. And so very rarely are there pins or finishes in the TV match. And as you might imagine, Gorgeous George was the heavy favorite by something like 85% chance of Gorgeous George winning. That's why I didn't want to broadcast that first one. I should have broadcasted it. But the pre-match, I'll show you how this works. But basically the pre-match statistic that was pulled was cheating. Okay? Who do you think excels in cheating other than Bobby the Brain Heenan? It just hit his number one category. And so, because of the cheating, the odds went down tremendously. And it rolled, the result was in favor of Bobby the Brain. So we look on the TV rating for Gorgeous George, and it hit chaos. And you roll in the chaos chart, and it said, no chaos, go to finish. And so he got to roll a finishing move for Bobby the Brain Heenan, and he got foreign object plus pin. That's what it came out as. So in the first match, in the TV match, he used a foreign object. We don't know. We just use our imagination what that might be. You know, a chair, a table, a baseball bat. We don't know what it was. It didn't say, but he hit Gorgeous George probably when he was posing for the crowd, whooping it up for the crowd. He gets hit in the head by a foreign object and collapses, and he gets pinned by Bobby the Brain Heenan. So the first match is the most huge upset that you can imagine in the first match. So I should have recorded that one, I guess, but I didn't. Much closer match here today, and we're going to describe the two wrestlers that we're going to feature here today in this first match. Now, again, like I said, this is much more subjective. Who is the heel and who is the face? I picked the first wrestler is Scott Hall. So it says Scott Oliver Hall, born October 20th, 1958 in Chuluoto, Florida. American retired professional wrestler. In the course of his career, Hall wrestled for the American Wrestling Association, the AWA. Just lucked out that he got picked for the AWA, and he was actually a member of that in real life. He was discovered reportedly by Barry Windham while shopping in a Florida grocery store in late 1984. His first professional wrestling appearance came in the NWA's Jim Crockett Promotions in 1985. Coyote Scott Hall was his original name, was half of a short-lived tag team called the American Starship with Eagle Dan Spivey. The duo never made it past early card status and quickly went their separate ways. Hall would then join the AWA later that year. Big Scott Hall, as he was known then, teamed up with Kurt Hennig to form the AWA World Tag Team Championship by defeating Gorgeous Jimmy Harvin and Mr. Electricity's Steve Regal on January 18th, 1986. The perfect combination, as they were dubbed by a Pro Wrestling Illustrated article, had fought many hard-fought matches against Buddy Rose and Doug Summers during this time. Hall wrestled in the WWF as Razor Ramon, a Cuban American from Miami who was modeled after Tony Montana, Al Pacino's character from the movie Scarface. Although as he was pushed as a heel in his early WWF days, he gained considerable popularity and won the WWF Intercontinental Championship on 4 occasions, then a record. Hall's first appearance on WCW television after leaving the WWF was an unannounced interview when he appeared in street clothes, claiming to be an outsider. He was then joined in the following weeks by Kevin Nash, the two claiming that they were going to undertake a hostile takeover of the WCW. The storyline directly paralleled the real-life competition between the WWF and the WCW. At the following pay-per-view, the Outsiders, along with a mystery partner, took on Sting, Lex Luger, and Macho Man Randy Savage. The mystery partner turned out to be Hulk Hogan, and the three formed the NWO, or New World Order. After the NWO storyline, Hall had some stints as a singles wrestler, but was saddled with various drug and criminal convictions. He last worked for the TNA. In 2004, Hall bounced around the promotion for a few months before leaving. His future in the wrestling business is currently uncertain. So here's all his championships and accomplishments: AWA World Tag Team Champion, USWA Heavyweight Champion, 2-time WCW US Heavyweight Champion, 7-time WCW World Tag Team Champion, WCW World Television Champion, WWC Caribbean Champion, and 4-time WWF Intercontinental Champion. So just because of this, he was pushed as a heel, but he became popular, and so he was a face. So that's why I picked him as the face for this next match. And he will face... I think he's higher. He will face, and it's just a schedule generator. I didn't pick the order of the schedule or anything like that. This is the next match, and it's between the guy we just had. I have to go back now. Scott Hall. There's so many hearts. I got them mixed up. Scott Hall and Hawk. Hawk is the heel in our match. Known as Road Warrior Hawk, was an American wrestler billed from Chicago, Illinois. He died in 2003. For many years, he was with Joseph Laurinaitis, also called Road Warrior Animal. Together, they are a muscular tag team called the Road Warriors. The Road Warriors burst onto the wrestling scene in 1983, sporting mohawks, dog collars, and spiked shoulder pads and face paint. Indeed, they were a modern-day version of Bruiser and Crusher. Their interview style was vicious, yet charismatic and a bit humorous. The Road Warriors wrestled across the globe, capturing the AGPW, that's Japanese Wrestling Tag Team titles, as well as every American version of the World Tag Team titles, WWF, NWA, AWA. So he's another. We just lucked out, and he's in the AWA as well. A feat that no other tag team can claim. Hegstrand died on October 19, 2003 in the early morning in his home in Indian Rocks Beach, Florida at 46 years old. His friends said that he and his wife Dale had recently bought a condominium near their current home and were packing their boxes Saturday evening. Hegstrand said he felt tired and went to take a nap. When his wife checked on him about 1 a.m., he had died of apparent heart attack. He had battles with alcohol and drugs throughout his career and was admitted steroids user. Any one of the above circumstances could have weakened his heart. So here's all his titles. They go as long as my arm. Much with tag team, but he's going to be fighting here. You can see if he is a tag team that he has a tremendous tag team rating of plus 750. If it is a tag team, his partner will be Super Machine, and that again is just random. He also was a very good, Super Machine was a good tag team man as well, so it's a good matchup. His manager is Paul E. Dangerously. Again, it is just a random matchup. So this is the match we're going to feature here today. Scott Hall is the face and Hawk is the heel. The manager of Scott Hall is Classy Freddie Blassie, and Michael Haynes is his partner if need be. Paul E. Dangerously is the manager of Hawk, and Super Machine is his partner. So what happens sometimes is the results say that his allies, his wrestling allies, start fighting, and it turns into a tag team match. That can happen. So we have a tag team, 2 tag team members available. We have managers available. We have all, just in case anything happens. So let's start and describing how this game works. So we look at Scott Hall's card, and he has this overall rating here of 2360, and Hawk is 2250. So unlike the first match, which had a gap of over 1,000 points, this one is very close, and the result is not obvious. So Scott Hall, his base is 2360. If it turns into a tag team match, he contributes 440 points to the tag team. And Hawk has a base of 2250. He contributes 750 to the tag team. So the singles match score at this point is Scott Hall's 2360 and Hawk 2250 for a difference of 110. If we look on the results chart, 110 means that 1 to 53 is for the higher rated wrestler, who is Scott Hall. Anything from 1 to 53, Hall wins, and from 54 to 100, Hawk wins. But that's not the only factors. We roll, first of all, a match modifier. This is what we hit for Bobby the Brain and caused him to be allowed to win, as you will see. We hit a cheating. Now, the disadvantage that the face has is that he's not allowed to cheat. He's a nice guy. He's a moral, upstanding guy. And because he's the face, so he's not allowed. If it hits cheat, it's definitely a huge advantage for the heel. All right? So, let's see. We have 2 dies. One is a 10-sided die and one's a 100-sided die. We're going to roll right now for the match modifier. We roll a 1, so it's technical. Technical is the flag. We look at the technical for Scott Hall. He's a 0. And for Hawk, he gets plus 10. So that moves it down to just 100 difference. Okay, so Hawk was a much more technical fighter than Scott Hall. Now we look at the partners. You see Michael Haynes, his partner, contributes plus 15 to the technical score. So while Scott Hall was not a good technical fighter, his partner is and gets 15. And we look at the partner Super Machine. He's plus 10 for technical, so he gets 20. So whatever the difference is between these two, it costs. See, that was the big thing. Because it was cheating, Gorgeous George, even though he was a good cheater, he was not allowed to be a cheater because he's the face. And Bobby the Brain, of course, is the heel, so he was allowed to be a cheater. Plus his partner was a great cheater. So they had 125 they added to that. And if you notice here, in determining the match modifier for the bout, compare the difference between the 2 wrestlers in that category. For every 20-point difference, go up 1 result for the underdog, 1 down for the favorite. So what that means is because there was a huge advantage for Bobby the Brain, what was over 1,000 points difference, he got to move up 6 columns because of the match modifier. And so he made a much more respectable chance for him to win, and it paid off. And he hit the mark, and he got the result. Now we look also at the managers. Now what do the managers contribute? Well, in our case, we hit the technical modifier. We look at the managers, and Paul E. Dangerously activates. His characteristics activate if we hit normal. If the match modifier would have been normal, and we see here that there is no, there is no normal in this one. So I think it's on the, and we could change this. There's another match modifier from another game. It's kind of a combination of the two games. We can see if Paul E. Dangerously, let's see, he's manager. I think, does he have two? Because sometimes he has a no, he just has one. So we can use the other match modifier when Hawk wrestles to make that fair. But because of that, he doesn't activate on the match modifier. But however, Scott Hall's manager activates on tech and cheat. So we hit the tech, so he activates. Now he only activates in the next roll. We have a pre-match roll. If we roll the face, then not only do we look at the face pre-match event chart, but we also look at the manager chart because he is activated if we hit the face. And I think normal is, we can activate the normal if it's a pre-match none. I think that's normal. Okay, that's how it works, yes. So Paul E. Dangerously will activate if we hit the none on the pre-match. That's the way it works. Okay, I got mixed up a little bit. Anyway, so if we hit tech on the face, Classy Freddy Blassie will activate, and all these things will come into play. So that's the next thing. Now that we have the match modifiers in place, we see that Scott Hall still has an advantage of 105. Okay, so he still has 11 to 53 is his favor. So we can put that down here. 1 to 53 is for Scott Hall. And, oh yeah, I forgot to remember to do that. Delete. I got to put this. 1 to 53. And then 54 to 100. 54 to 100 is the Hawk. He wins. Now, we have to roll the pre-match. Roll a 10-sided die once again, and we see what happens. It's a 2, so it's none. So in this case, it's normal, and Paul E. Dangerously does activate, not Freddy Blassie. So it's none. So none of these face pre-match event chart or the heel pre-match event chart comes into play, but Paul E. Dangerously's manager chart comes into play. And we're going to roll another 10-sided die to see what happens. What effect does Paul E. Dangerously have for Hawk in this match? 8. So it says, distracted by fans as wrestler is being choked. Minus 200 wrestler. So what's happening here is the fans, because he's the heel, Paul E. Dangerously is getting heckled by the fans. He's distracted by the fans. And Scott Hall is choking the Hawk. Or he's not the Hawk, he's just Hawk. So he gets minus 200 to his own wrestler. He should be there helping out his wrestler. But because of that, he's distracted. And as a result, it's a 200 minus. So all of a sudden, we have a 305 difference. And 305 makes the changes from 53 to 60. So Hall suddenly, because his manager is not paying attention, has much more of a chance of winning this first TV taping match. Okay, so Now that we have all this, the pre-matches is all taken care of. Now we are going to... So we know that the match is going, and we know that Hawk is being choked. So now we're going to find out what the result is of the match. And we use a 100-sided die. If we roll 1 to 60, the match could be a victory for Scott Hall. If it's 61 to 100, it could be a victory for Hawk. All right, here is the roll. 29. So Scott Hall could be the winner. We're on the TV match. And in this case, you look at the losers TV match column, which is this column right here. And we roll another 10-sided die, and we see what kind of a result. How did this match end? Scott Hall might have won, but we're not really sure. Okay, here we go. It is an 8. 8 is a draw. So Hawk could have lost, but instead the match comes out a draw. So how did that happen? How did the Hawk not lose and instead got the draw? Well, we'll look at another 100-sided die and look at the draw results. And we're going to roll that. It's a 21. Time limit draw. Of course, on TV matches, there is a 10-minute time limit. You know, they can't go hours and hours. They go, there's a time limit. So time limit draw, back and forth match with neither man getting an advantage. So we have a draw in the first match. We threw a result of 20-something. I should have wrote that down. 23, or let's put it at 23. So the result was it should have been Scott Hall, but because it was a back and forth match, Hawk, even though he was in trouble, we assume he was in trouble because Hall got the roll, but he lasted until the time limit, and it was a draw. Okay? So in this case, we go back here, and we put the results way down here in the schedule. Scroll. You get here, and the TV time, it's a draw. So in this case, both wrestlers get 1 point. So time limit draw. So we go to the standings, and we have one draw for Scott Hall. It's not a win, it's a draw. And we have a draw for Hawk. So you can see in the standings, Bobby Heenan leads with 3 points. You get 3 points for a pin. You get other wins like a disqualification. If the other wrestler is disqualified, you get 2 points and 1 point for a draw. So, at the end of the round robin, whoever has the most points is the champion of this association. That's the way we're going to play this. So we just sort these out. We'd see Bobby the Brain Heenan would be the leader at this point. Of course, this is not over. You have a time limit draw. Of course, there's no resolution to this match. So now we go from a TV taping match to a pay-per-view match. WrestleMania or something like that. So now we go to a pay-per-view match. We saw that it was a draw in the first result. So now we have a pay-per-view match. And we go to, once again with these, the ratings are the same. Sometimes certain events here, like you look here, a clean pin, you subtract 20 points. So for instance, Gorgeous George will go down 25 points from his overall rating on his next for permanently because he had a clean pin. And Bobby the Brain will go up 20 points because he had a clean pin. So these ratings change over time. So now, but in this case, a time limit draw does not change their overall rating, so it's still the same. So now we're going to the pay-per-view match, and we're going to roll for the match modifier again. Match modifier in this case is 4. It's Savvy. So We look at the Savvy rating for Scott Hall is plus 20. And the Savvy rating for Hawk is 25. So we go down here. And the match modifier 20 for Scott Hall and 25 for Hawk. Then we look at their partners and see what they contribute under Savvy. Savvy 50 for Michael Haynes. His partner's very savvy. And Super Machine is 25. So he has a good partner. He lucked out on that one. And he adds 50 points to his Savvy. So he has 70. And 25 makes 50. Okay, so at this point, Scott Hall once again has a 130 point advantage. Now we look at... Now Savvy is not one of the cheats or activations for Classy Freddy Blassie. So in this case, we go now to the pre-match. And we roll for that. 10 is face. So the pre-match face. Now, in this case, if it would have been tech or cheat, Classy Freddy would have been activated. But he's not. It was Savvy, so he's not activated. So we go down to the face pre-match event chart here on this pay-per-view match. And we roll a 100-sided die to see what happens in the pre-match. 40. Retired wrestler offers advice. Plus 50 for this match. So some retired wrestler, who I can't imagine who that be because a lot of the retired wrestlers are back to life and in fighting in the AWA, but some retired wrestler has given advice to the face, so he gets 50 points. So we have a 180 final advantage for the face, Scott Hall. We look on the rates for 180, and that is 1 to 56. So this match, 1 to 56 is... I gotta always remember to put that that little diddle there. 56 and 57 to 100 is advantage Hawk. So now we're going to roll and we're going to see what the outcome is. 56% chance for Scott Hall to get the advantage. It's 80. So in this case, the Hawk gets the advantage. If there's a win, it is the Hawk who will win. Okay, that's what that means. So we look on the pay-per-view chart for Scott Hall. He's the loser. And now we roll a 10-sided die on his card. So we roll 8. So it is a possible pin. It's not just a possible pin. It is a pin here in the pay-per-view match by the Hawk. And in this case, it's a pin... The flying clothesline pin. So the winner of the pay-per-view match is Hawk. There's no disqualification match because it's over. You go until there's a pin or a finish of some kind. So the roll was it was higher than 56. I forget. I should always write down what the roll was. But regardless, it is a pin. I should put it over here. Pin for Hawk. So we go to the chart here and we put 0 points for Scott Hall and 3 points for Hawk. He gets the pin. So we have a pin we have a loss. He's pinned. Scott Hall gets a pinned and Hawk gets he pins. There's pins and pinned. So you see here with his draw, Hawk takes first place very early, of course, in the AWA. Hawk has 4 points. Bobby Heenan has 3 points. Scott Hall has 1 point. And Gorgeous George has 0. So that is where we're at. We just go through and we play all these games. The next is Tommy Rich versus the Big Boss Man. Red Rooster Taylor is the face, and Vader is the heel. Brock Lesnar is the face. Gorilla Monsoon is the heel. George Animal Steel is the face. Jimmy Hart's the heel. face and heel. Vern Gagne was one of the most popular wrestlers in history. He's always the face, is the way I play it. He is the number one face. It's between him and Gorgeous George. You might say, well, The Rock. The Rock can play it both ways. And so he's mostly the face. But there's times when he faced some of these super popular wrestlers like Gorgeous George and Vern Gagne. And also Jack Briscoe was very popular. The Rock is always the heel against those guys. And Mick Foley against the Missing Link. Mick Foley would prefer being the face. But against the Missing Link, who is not very popular, he'll play the face in that one, and so on. And we just go. You can play very quickly. You can go through this. You don't explain everything. You can get through the entire association in a few days and have points. And then we will have a total point champion of the AWA. And then we move on to the, we can go to the Continental Wrestling Association. We'll probably go here. The CWA Continental Wrestlers are Brutus the Barber Beefcake, Dick the Bruiser, Dory Funk Sr., Goldberg, Greg the Hammer Valentine, Haystacks Calhoun, Hulk Hogan, Lars Anderson, Lex Luger, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, Ray Stevens, the Sandman, Shark Boy, Special Delivery Jones, Tiger Mask, Triple H, Typhoon Tugboat, Viscera, Yokozuna are members of the Continental Wrestling Association, and they will battle it out in the exact same way. This should be exciting. This is just the first broadcast of the World Championship Wrestling on the King Icheboo Sports Network. We hope you tune in for next match to be determined. We will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.